Huh? You're pregnant? No way. You're not serious about having the baby, right? That was the first thing my husband said to me when I finally got pregnant at 40. Having a baby at your age, that kid's definitely gonna be defective. I can't deal with raising a child like that. With those words, he left me. 30 years later, I randomly bumped into my ex-husband on the streets. Looking exactly the same. Is that defective daughter of yours even alive? Well, even if she is, she's probably unemployed, right? He could afford to spew such nonsense only for so long. Because my daughter turned out to be an admirable. My name is Catherine Smith. I'm turning 70 this year. Today, I'd like to share a story about how my dark past was cleansed. Back in my youth, I was what you'd call a career woman, working in a male-dominated company, competing with men in sales. Of course, there were those who resented me, but I didn't care and strove every day to be the top salesperson. Being tomboyish by nature and constantly competing with men, I didn't have many men approaching me, but that didn't bother me at all. Work was my everything. However, my parents were quite traditional and believed that a woman's happiness was in marriage, so they took me to matchmaking sessions time and again. At a party I was invited to by a colleague, I met Michael. He was planning to start a business and found my dedication to work impressive. "The future is for women to work hard too," he said, acknowledging my dedication. At a time when it was still frowned upon for women to work so hard, it was probably inevitable that I was drawn to Michael, who accepted me for who I was. We continued to date smoothly and decided to get married. I was 30 and Michael was 28 at the time. I guess you could call me the older wife. After graduating from a prestigious university, my husband Michael landed a job at a renowned company. But he declared he had a dream. And with that, he quit to start his own venture. It was quite a gutsy move, especially since he didn't rely on the knowledge or technology from his previous job, but chose to start a business in an entirely different field. At that time, I had no knowledge of entrepreneurship. My only aim was to get a job and work my butt off. That's why, when Michael shared his firm resolution to start a business, I must admit I was taken aback by his masculinity and thought it was cool. When I'd come home after work, he'd tell me things like "I tried this out today" or "This is my goal," and "This is the issue at hand." I didn't quite grasp all of it, but I enjoyed listening to his work stories. Living a monotonous daily life and striving to excel at my job, I found Michael's tales exciting and appealing. Then, a few years passed. And one day my company held a family social event. It was a weekend gathering where employees and their families came together for a barbecue to deepen our connections. At this time, Michael's business wasn't doing so well, nearly at the brink of closure. Looking for a change of scenery, I invited Michael to the family social, and he was thrilled to join. But during the barbecue, a close office assistant approached me, asking if Michael was drunk, expressing concern. Michael can handle his liquor. And doesn't change much when he's drunk. What happened? I asked, puzzled. The assistant told me she was worried because she saw Michael arguing with Ms. Smith from accounting. Arguing with Ms. Smith? Concerned, I rushed over to Michael and heard him saying, "But it's the truth, isn't it?" I quickly pulled Michael away and apologized to Ms. Smith for the disturbance. Later, I went to Ms. Smith to get the full story, and it turned out Michael had said something offensive about factory workers, suggesting it must be tough. I apologized deeply to her and thankfully, she forgave us. However, this discriminatory remark by Michael wasn't entirely surprising. Yes. Michael always took pride in graduating from a prestigious university, landing a job at a renowned company, and even starting his own business. He had a tendency to look down on others based on education and background. As someone with limited dating experience, I did feel a bit off about his remarks, but also felt proud when he said that me being a woman did not stop me from graduating from a prestigious university and competing in the male-dominated workforce. Despite some issues, we were living happily as a couple. Yet, we had another worry. We were having trouble conceiving a child. At that point, I was still working hard and wasn't too stressed about it, thinking it was something we couldn't control. But as I reached my mid-30s, the situation felt more pressing. Even so, I thought that if worst came to worst and we couldn't have kids, living a peaceful life just the two of us wouldn't be so bad. However, Michael seemed to have a different view. He began to express frustration about not having children yet. "It's embarrassing that we don't have kids at this age. Everyone around us has at least two. It's inconceivable that I'm the only one without any." That remark was what was truly inconceivable. In my mind, I retorted. It seemed Michael had a clear life plan. Marry a woman with superior genes in his 20s. Have 2 kids by his early 30s. He says this is the path that successful people take. A plan I had never heard of. But Michael seemed to live by it. In my 20s, I met and married Michael, who deemed me to possess superior genes. The plan was progressing smoothly until it hit an unforeseen snag. I was supposed to have born 2 children by now, yet conceiving had become a challenge. This displeased Michael. His frustration started to show, and he bluntly criticized me. "You're academically successful and career-oriented, but it seems you lack maternal aptitude." Moreover, he accused me, "Your alma mater might be renowned, but as a woman, you're flawed." I've been duped. When I broached the subject of fertility treatments, Michael rejected the idea, stating, "Children born through fertility treatments can't possibly be superior. I'm totally against it." What a biased opinion. No matter how I tried to persuade him, even suggesting a simple hospital visit, he'd say things like, "Going to the hospital for such a thing would be an embarrassment." When I tentatively proposed at least getting tested, he exploded, "What, you're saying it's my fault? Cut it out." He yelled and insisted, "If you really want to go that badly, go by yourself." But going alone seemed pointless. Fertility treatments are a couple's endeavor. Yet, Michael failed to understand this. Nonetheless, I visited the fertility clinic alone, where the doctor told me, "Everything seems fine. Please come back with your husband next time." That was to be expected. After all, a child isn't made alone. Yet, without Michael's cooperation, it seemed I had no choice but to give up. That's what I thought. A decade into our marriage, I began to see Michael's so-called masculinity as nothing more than selfishness. His enthusiasm for starting a business had faded into a cycle of starting and giving up, and now, 10 years later, nothing had changed. While he did odd jobs occasionally, my salary was the mainstay of our finances. Yet, he would conveniently ignore any inconvenient truths. How many times had the thought of divorce crossed my mind? But after 10 years, affection takes root. Occasionally he was harsh, but if I didn't dwell on it, it didn't bother me. Humans are peculiar in that way. And then, on one fateful day as I turned 40, something astonishing happened. I was pregnant. My period had stopped. Had I reached menopause already? But at 40, wasn't that too soon? Worried it might be an illness, I decided to visit the hospital. The doctor's words left me stunned. "You're pregnant." "But I'm 40 years old." "Pregnant?" I replied in disbelief. The doctor reassured me, "It's not uncommon for women at 40 to conceive." Though it was surprising. The doctor continued, "There are risks compared to younger mothers, and there are precautions you'll need to take, but many have healthy babies." Encouraged by the doctor's words, I was elated at the prospect of having a child. Surely Michael would share in my joy. Full of excitement, I reported the news to Michael. However, his response was utterly unexpected. "What? You're pregnant? That's gotta be a joke. You're not seriously considering keeping it, are you?" Michael's unexpected words left me speechless and dumbfounded. But without a hint of concern for how I felt, he continued, "Having a baby at your age, that child is definitely going to have issues. Raising a kid like that is just something I can't handle. If you insist on going through with this, then it's divorce time." That's what he said to me. It felt like a hammer blow to the head. This was the child I had longed for. Not having it was not an option for me. Yet Michael was saying if I went through with it, we would get divorced. It turned out that to Michael, I was not someone to be loved, but merely a tool for producing superior children. Sure, after 10 years together, some affection had developed, but if I had to choose between Michael and my child, there wouldn't be a moment of hesitation. I'd choose my child. I could get by without Michael just fine. In fact, it would probably be harder for him than for me. With that in mind, I declared to Michael, I am absolutely having this child. The next day, he slapped the divorce papers in front of me. He was serious. But my decision was unwavering. We were going to divorce. As I filled out the divorce papers, Michael said to me, from now on, stay out of my life. So that's how it would be until the end. What were those 10 years for, I wondered. But I too had no desire to have anything more to do with such a man. I gave up any claim to alimony and child support and decided to go back to my parents' house. I was anxious about whether I could continue working in sales while pregnant, but the company appreciated my years of hard work and asked me instead to train my junior colleagues internally until my maternity leave, which I was grateful for. Michael had been cruel, but I was surrounded by understanding people who encouraged me, and I gave birth to a healthy girl, Mindy. Despite the worries of a child born to an older mother, Mindy grew up well-nourished. With love from me and my parents, becoming a thoughtful, beautiful, and kind girl. Raised freely, she became a curious and lively child. Fast forward 30 years. I'm now 70. And Mindy is 30. An independent and successful adult. I've lived happily without a single thought of Michael. Then, one day, I was stopped by a familiar voice on the street. Hey, is that you, Catherine? Michael? Yes, it was that detestable Michael. What's with you, looking all scruffy like that? Michael approached with a sneer. Just turned into an old lady, huh? I guess taking care of a kid with disabilities is tough, right? He assumed Mindy was disabled, hurling the same old insults at me as before. After our divorce, I remarried a woman 10 years younger. Looks really are everything with women. Turns out education didn't matter at all. Michael bragged, unasked, about his life post-divorce. After our divorce, I remarried a woman 10 years younger. Looks really are everything with women. Turns out education didn't matter at all. Michael bragged, unasked, about his life post-divorce. Got a daughter too, and unlike your disabled kid, mine's a beauty and pretty smart, too. She got the best of my brains and her mom's looks. What do you call it? Winning at life? We're out shopping together today. Dumping you was the best thing ever. Otherwise, I'd be stuck with you and that gloomy child of ours. Can't imagine that. Oh man, I'm so glad. Sure has a way with words, doesn't he? There are plenty of things I'd like to say back. But arguing with such a person is a waste of time. Taking my silence as consent, Michael's chatter didn't stop. I wished he'd just go away if he was out shopping with his daughters. Just then, when I was thinking that, a woman in a deep hat and mask approached from behind. Mom? What are you doing? Yes. It was Mindy. Do you know this person? She asked about Michael. I hesitated, unsure how to respond. I hadn't gone into detail with Mindy about her father. I had always intended to explain it properly, but Mindy had always said there was no need to force the topic. And she had never met him. I was still contemplating what to say when Michael, grinning, said, "Oh, looks like you can go outside, huh? Must be really ugly under that mask." Now he was attacking Mindy. I wouldn't stand for Mindy being attacked. I was about to argue back when an unexpected person did it for me. Hey! Where did you disappear all of a sudden? You're supposed to be carrying our bags. Natalie. The voice belonged to Michael's daughter, apparently named Natalie. Michael had been proudly talking about his new family, but it seemed they only saw him as a porter. Hearing this, Mindy murmured, "Wow, to think that guy is my father." What? Mindy, how did you? I was shocked. She laughed and said, "When he's talking that loudly, it's hard not to hear." Then Natalie, who had overheard, pushed Michael aside and rushed to Mindy, asking, "Could you be Mindy? I'm a huge fan. Could I maybe get your autograph? She was excited. Indeed. My daughter Mindy is an actress. Curious and eager, as a child, she held a flyer for a child actor audition, her eyes sparkling as she negotiated with me to apply. I thought she wouldn't get in, but let her apply anyway, and to my surprise, she was accepted. From there, Mindy worked hard and steadily, and, though I'm her parent, it's fair to say she's become a top-notch actress. And shockingly, Michael's daughter Natalie was a big fan of Mindy's. Watching all this, Michael flipped and started to brag, "Hey! Mindy's my daughter. She's doing great. I can brag about this." But then Natalie yelled at him, "You were just telling Mindy's mom how glad you were about the divorce, and calling Mindy defective. That's totally unacceptable. Even if Mindy and her mom forgive you, I will never forgive you for life." Sure enough, it seems even Michael couldn't say anything back to Natalie. After Natalie said that to him, he hurriedly came to apologize to us. But Michael's enemies only continued to grow. Michael's current wife, Christy, showed up and said, "You really need to start taking things seriously. Talking about starting a business, but just drifting around aimlessly. I've put up with it because you do anything I ask, so I've held off on divorce, but seeing how you treat your ex-wife, it's just cruel. Looking down on others and attacking those who seem weaker than you, it's the lowest of the low. I can't be with someone after seeing their true nature." "We're getting a divorce," she said nonchalantly. Caught off guard by the sudden declaration of divorce, Michael pleaded with Christy, "I'm really sorry. Please, anything but divorce." Despite his begging, both Christy and Natalie had had enough. Realizing pleading with them was useless, he turned to Mindy and said, "Please forgive my earlier rudeness. I'm terribly sorry. Could you please ask Christy to forgive me? I'm sure if you ask them, they'll listen to you. Help your dad out." It's amazing he could say such a thing after all that berating. Or rather, Mindy doesn't even consider this man her father. And why should she have to make such a request in the first place? As we stood there dumbfounded, Michael began to apologize, crying. "It was embarrassing and attracting attention, so please stop." Maybe sensing how we felt, Natalie told us, "I'm truly sorry for the trouble he's caused. I promise you, I won't let him claim to be Mindy's father. Go on, please leave. We'll handle this from here." Then, she secretly said to Mindy, "But I was really glad to meet you. I'll continue to support you." It seemed like Mindy was a good kid after all. We said goodbye to Christy and Natalie and left the place. Later on, I heard that Christy did go through with the divorce from Michael. He cried and threw a fit until the very end, not wanting a divorce, but how could anyone stay after seeing his true colors? In fact, I was almost impressed he'd managed to hide his true self from Christy and the others for so long. After the divorce was finalized, Michael was saddled with alimony, adding debt to his already incompetent life management, and he disappeared. I worried that rumors might spread about Mindy, but he was too down to cause any more trouble, thankfully. I know all this because Natalie apparently told Mindy via DM on social media. He turned out to be a terrible man, but it just goes to show, you reap what you sow. I will continue to fully support Mindy and live my life with gratitude to those around me. Now, the movie where Mindy is the lead is about to start. She's playing a lawyer who cuts down the evils of society. I'm looking forward to it.